So this is going to be, there's a lot flying at people. And so I think these toolkits and using them well is a hugely important thing that's going to help, not help anyone win, but just help make the process work in a way that lets the country keep moving forward. So gives your people some confidence in what they can do, let them do it, follow up with them about it. This isn't, the best way to do this is not to just send this email and hope. You're going to talk to your members. Keep talking to them about it. Ask them how it went afterwards. It's what we find is that it's a really good membership engagement tool as well. So not only are you helping the democracy, you're also like giving people an opportunity to talk to you about something that they don't usually get to talk to you about. You're going to get a different group of people that want to engage with you on this. And that can be a really strong thing because then you can get them engaged in the next thing down the road. So again, thanks to the coalitions for putting this together, and thank you all for being here and for taking this tool and running with it.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Does anybody have any quick questions for Josh?
Hey, Josh, this is Hope Cupid. When you said that it's really clean shot in Pennsylvania, are you registered to vote? Did you get your mail-in ballot? Can we say that across other states? Can we say that in Virginia particularly? That's the one I'm speaking to.
I don't want to tell you because I know Pennsylvania law, which even Pennsylvania law is changing right now. There are a bunch of court cases that are attempting to change it. So you would want to find somebody in Virginia. Mike Town, my counterpart at Virginia LCV, I'm sure would be happy to help you figure that out. But I think the coalitions may have a lot of that information for you, but I don't want to give it to you because I will be making it up.
Okay, I am working with other groups to make sure we get people out to vote. I do believe in Virginia, our governor has made the voting day a holiday, but that doesn't mean everyone has the holiday off.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure we do get the vote out, and thank you for speaking to that.
Please do. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions before we jump into the guide? All right, great. Thank you, Josh, for that great intro. All right, so I am going to turn it over to Drew, and then Emily also, who are going to be presenting our guide.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kristen, and Josh as well. Really excited for the opportunity to speak with you all this morning about a topic that's obviously critical and pivotal in our work to fighting for clean water. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but before I do, I want to send a link that you can peruse through this toolkit yourself. And of course, we'll be following up with everyone to share this toolkit so that it's spread far and wide. All right, with that, let me go ahead and share. All right, so just diving in, wanted to highlight at the beginning, Kristen already mentioned this, but we're going to have our Vote for Clean Water Day on September 1st. So a week from today, we're going to be flipping the calendar. People are going to remember or maybe realize, as I often do, that holy cow, time's going fast and the election's only a couple months away. And then at the same time, they're going to be receiving our message regarding voting for clean water and why, and seeing the tie between, voting and civic engagement and clean water. So we're excited for that. And then in a few weeks after that, there's National Voter Registration Day. So we're hoping that our respective members in our coalitions can also be sharing that message far and wide a few weeks later on September 22nd. Just a real quick, Kristen already mentioned this, but everything in this toolkit is 501c3 approved, and there are a lot of resources on what you can and can't do as a 501c3. I understand a lot of organizations.
It was $166.95.
I understand a lot of organizations have a lot of concerns about entering into this work without knowing exactly what's legal, because maintaining the 501c3 status is obviously critical, very important. We did a whole webinar on this in May. You can see the link here, which really dives into it. And there are, down towards the bottom here in the links, there's also several links about what you can and can't do. And if you still have questions, please reach out to us. We can connect you with the right folks who can answer any questions you might have. With that, I'll dive into our events that we have highlighted here. Of course, we have this webinar this morning, so I won't dive into that. CDRW has a couple other webinars approaching. The post-election webinar will certainly be interesting. Looking forward to that one. And as we've already mentioned, the Vote for Clean Water Day and National Voter Registration Day. And then Maryland League of Conservation Voters also is having a voter registration couch party. It's a cool, engaging idea. You can read more about it and see more info at that link. With that, one thing we definitely wanted to highlight is important deadlines that are approaching as we plan over what we're going to cover over the next couple months. So I'll give it over to Emily to cover the deadlines.
And Drew, it might just be me, but do you mind zooming in a little bit on your screen because it's really
Sure.
small, I think, for everybody. Thanks.
If you put away the sidebar, the little like table of contents, that should make it bigger too. Or maybe not.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew, for going through the events in the beginning there. So thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we hope you will find this guide useful. So under the important deadlines, what our coalition staff has done, as well as CDRW, we've broken it down by state. So for every state, there are deadlines for registering to vote, for requesting your absentee ballot, when you need to return that absentee ballot. There's information for the states that have it on early voting. There's also, in some cases, information on ballot drop boxes and where you can find those and when your absentee ballot needs to be returned to those. Again, in the states that have that information available. So I think the key here is to know that this information is different from every state. The best source for it and what we've used to put this together is the State Board of Elections web pages. That's where I have all this information from. And in some cases, it is still evolving. So, you know, I looked at Maryland today, for example, some of the information still isn't available in terms of, you know, the Dropbox location. So as those things are added to those web pages, we'll be adding it here to our toolkit, and we'll also be adding the links directly to our Civic Engagement webpage, which is on our Choose Clean Water website as well. Oh, thanks, Drew. And that is broken down by the Bay States as well. So we have, again, direct links to, you know, checking whether or not you're registered to vote, requesting your absentee ballot, again, early voting. Some states do have voter ID laws in our watershed, so that information is there as well. So all of this is broken down in the toolkit by state, both for the Delaware River Watershed and the Chesapeake Bay Watershed. Yeah, and we're going to continue to add to it. Because these dates are different, we really want to make sure that we're sharing consistent information, because I think what Josh said is really important is that, you know, it can be really confusing. We want to make sure that people are getting good, consistent information so they can get out to vote. So that's really our goal with this toolkit. So if for whatever reason you see something in here that's not consistent with what your organization is sharing for whatever reason, or if you see some of this information come out before we do, definitely let us know. Drew has his email at the top of the toolkit, so you can share that with us. Yeah, so this will be updated as we go, as we get closer to election day. Yeah, and with that, I'll pass it back over to Drew.
Awesome. Yeah, and as Emily mentioned, you know, this being a Google Doc, the beauty of it is we're going to be updating it, not only the deadline section, but other pieces throughout the toolkit as well. So social media posts, one of the bread and butter of any good toolkit is having, you know, some pieces that folks can plug and play, copy and paste right away and just use. So we certainly have plenty of those here. Of course, you know, with any good social post, having a link is, you know, best practice. But you're certainly welcome to link to something else. A lot of these are to vote.org because it's just a great, solid resource. nonpartisan, of course, and has just a lot of great materials and content right there on the site. So we linked a lot to that several times. Of course, we're using the hashtag Vote for Clean Water. So please feel free to use any of these. There are opportunities to customize the content. You know, if you're focusing on a specific state, you can enter that here. And just something else, of course, you know, feel free to use these posts as inspiration to come up with your own posts. But the messaging in here, you know, again, is all 501c3 appropriate, and just encourages, you know, makes that connection between voting and clean water. We did differentiate between when these posts are appropriate. A lot of these posts are for, you know, most of September, and then once we get to election, some of the messaging changes a little bit given where we are in the election time frame. And so those are, feel free to use any of these. And then of course, we also have some social media images. Again, feel free to make your own, but these are just some pieces for you to be able to just to plug and play, and share the message far and wide. Many thanks to Emily for putting all these images together. And then also, as I mentioned, you can link to anything you want, of course, in the social media posts, but some organizations have taken the initiative to come up with their own web pages where they can highlight, you know, voting information, such as, you know, what we have here. It's, you know, that's one opportunity, but you can also talk about why elections are important. And, you know, connect the mission of your organization to voting. So definitely encourage your organization to create a web page like this. We're happy to help. One cool piece right here is vote.org gives you the ability to put in this voter registration piece, right, the code right there on your web page for free. You can also do it. This is check your registration, but you can also do it to register to vote directly there. And there are some other resources too. Apologies for my crazy dog in the background. It's par for the course. Everyone on the coalition team, Choose Clean Water team, is used to it, I suppose. Another piece we wanted to include in the toolkit is just scenic photos that folks can use. We broke this up by photos in the Delaware River Watershed and the Chesapeake Bay. This is just touching the tip of the iceberg, of course. There are countless beautiful photos, but just wanting to have these available to folks so that they can, you know, include them in any social posts to remind folks, you know, what this vote impacts. So feel free to use any of those as well. Josh mentioned in his intro about, you know, the power of sending some of this public information about voting and voter registration to people's inboxes. You know, certainly email, you know, it depends on the organization, but for most organizations, email is the most powerful medium to connect to your members. So while doing stuff on social media is all well and good, and we very much hope that all of you and your organizations participate and vote for #Vote for Clean Water Day on September 1st. You know, email is also another critical place to reach out to your members with this information. So we provided a handful of examples. This isn't an exhaustive list. There are plenty of members that have sent great emails that aren't included in this list, but, you know, it's broken out by the voter registration and voting logistics. So that's something that would be appropriate to send, you know, in the next few weeks. So there's a few examples of that, you know, from a variety of different organizations. So, you know, this is really just meant to serve as inspiration for what your organizations can do. And then we have get out the vote emails as well. So the Potomac Conservancy has some great emails here. Some of these links work. Some of them are from past election cycles, so the links are dead. So just a warning for that, but feel free to check them out and to see if they work. You know, VCN has, you know, just basic FAQs. Again, you know, some of these are from past elections, so they might be outdated, but this is the point is to give you inspiration for what you could do. Also, we are highlighting blogs. We have several blogs in the works on the Choose Clean Water side. CDRW already has a couple live. These are also meant to serve as inspiration. We realize that all the organizations in our membership and I'm sure on this call represent a wide range on the spectrum of how they've engaged with civic engagement in the past, from never having done anything before to, being someone like Maryland League of Conservation Voters, where voting is literally in their name and it's something that it's part of their DNA. There's a wide spectrum, and we designed this toolkit so that, you can find something useful in it no matter where you are on the spectrum. So I hope that the blogs certainly are meant more for the folks that are kind of new to this, to show them what's possible, inspire you to take up this work, because it's obviously, we believe it's really important. With that, I'll stop talking and pass it over to Emily for some of the tools and resources, talking about steps to vote by mail here.
Thanks, Drew. So under this tools and resources heading, I believe we have two different things laid out here. The first one is a really good link from NPR. I know I've shared this one with people already, so it's a really good one. If you're looking for a link to share on your social media channels, I would recommend this for posts about absentee voting. So this basically just lays out a really good step-by-step of how to register and request your mail-in ballot and return it to make sure that your vote is successfully returned and counted. So I think this could be really good, as the same as some of the emails that Drew showed above, putting together an email that lays out the process, or even breaking this down into social media posts. I think it just really gives a good breakdown of the process. And the last step that it mentions is helping a friend register to vote and request their absentee ballot. And that's, kind of what we're all trying to accomplish here, is helping our members and everyone in our community successfully get out the vote and make sure that they can successfully vote with everything going on this year. And one thing I'll mention before I talk about the tabling for voter registration, in the deadline section, a lot of those are in like October, mid-October to late October. One thing we really want to emphasize is that this messaging should really be the sooner the better. The sooner you can register, the sooner you can request your absentee ballot, the better, because then we're not, there's not like that last minute rush at the end where things might get a little bit more held up. So along with those deadlines, as you're putting those out, either in emails or on social media, just really encouraging people, if they are going to vote by mail, to do it sooner rather than later, to make sure they request their ballot. So I just wanted to include that since I forgot to mention it up top. And then I believe CDRW included this, and it's a really good how-to on tabling for voter registration. And one caveat, and Drew added some COVID precautions here, is obviously there's not that many events going on right now. We're not going to have as many opportunities for tabling as we would in normal times. But with that being said, we do intend for this document to be evergreen. After the 2020 election, we don't really want to stick it in a drawer and forget about it. This is something we want to be able to reuse year over year for our civic engagement efforts. So in the future, this is just a good guide on how to post tabling for voter registration. I think at the end there, it has a prompt and a script of, how you can engage someone and talk to them about registering to vote. So there are some good how-tos in there. And with that, I will pass it back over to Drew for the links.
Awesome. Great. So we've already highlighted, shameless plug here, the Choose Clean Water webpage that has a lot of these tools and resources. But just wanted also to highlight these links in the toolkit itself. The Alliance for Justice, they have a ton of great content about elections, and specifically they have a lot of great links about 501c3s and what's allowed and what's not. So you can just, it didn't take me very long just to go through all their resources and just pull out a bunch of them that are really applicable and appropriate to include in a toolkit like this. So yep, please feel free to go through this. There's lots to learn. And something else that we didn't mention at the top is civic engagement. We had a webinar at the end of May where Mary Rafferty from Virginia Conservation Network spoke eloquently about how civic engagement isn't just an election year thing, it's a year-round thing. It's something that we're always doing, engaging with our legislators, encouraging our members, the citizens in the watershed to reach out to their decision makers at the local, state, and federal levels, fighting for clean water. And that's something that never stops. So while the majority of this toolkit is focused on, the next few months with elections and what we can do on that front, there are some pieces here about advocacy and lobbying and what nonprofits, 501c3s can and can't do on that front, and lots of good resources here. Also talking about the census, that's a big deal this year as well. But yeah, as Emily mentioned, definitely an evergreen tool that we're hoping to update and evolve, not only over the coming months, for sure we will, but over the coming years as well. So with that, that is our run through of the toolkit. I hope that you're still with us. We want to open it up to questions, and I guess before we do that, just real quick, I think this was already mentioned, but we're always looking for feedback on this. If there's anything we're missing, if there's anything that's incorrect, please let us know. We would love to hear it. But with that, open it up to any questions folks might have.
And there's one other thing I wanted to add. This is Kristen. So Conservation Voters Pennsylvania has also put together a toolkit for the Delaware specifically. While this one has both of us in it, they were already putting together a toolkit. There's a little bit different. I'm going to pop it into the chat here. I just got the okay from Kristen Zolkowski over there that I could share it. And there's some other additional resources in this one for folks that are both in the Chesapeake and Delaware watersheds. But one of the things you'll see is they've kind of broken it out with a register to vote, a sign up to vote by mail, but they've also added some more resources on how to register as a poll worker. You've probably heard that this is a big issue this election, knowing that most folks who have worked the polls before tend to be an older demographic, they're retired, they have more time to take off the day to do that. And so there's definitely a need there. And so they've created that toolkit as well. That's also something you can talk about as a 501c3. So if you're interested in pushing that messaging, I would check out their toolkit here, and we will be adding a link to this in ours as well. So you'll be able to access it there. But they just got the okay to share it. So that's why it's not in there yet.
One other thing I want to add, depending on where you live, I know in DC, everyone is going to be, all registered voters are going to be mailed their ballot. So you don't have to request it unless you want it to be sent to a different address. And I think the plan in Maryland is still that all registered voters are going to receive a ballot application. So as those things kind of like solidify a little more and we know what each state's going to do, we'll be adding information on that to the toolkit and our webpage as well. But that's just something to be aware of. Make sure you look into whether or not you're already going to receive your ballot or whether you need to request it. So we'll add more information about that too.
No questions. I guess we did a good job.
We did have one question that came in the chat that Emily and I sort of and responded to, but there was a question about strategically saying absentee versus mail-in ballot. And there's some attempts to make a distinction in favor of absentee, especially I think some of those words are being politicized. I think one other way to sort of avoid that entirely is just to use the language vote by mail, which I think is what Conservation Voters in their toolkit has used uniformly. So I think that might make sense for this toolkit to have, and as well for most people just to focus on, because then it just doesn't, wade into those waters at all. We're just talking about voting by mail.
Those are legally distinct options in Pennsylvania. I don't have a question. I just did want to double down on something Drew had said earlier. Like in this toolkit, you'll see that the deadline to sign up to vote by mail that's another language distinction, by the way. We don't want to say apply to vote by mail. It's not an application. You can't get rejected. You're just signing up to vote by mail. That actually has like a significant impact on how people think about it. The deadline is October 27th. So you could apply. If the post office can turn things around in 2 days, that's fine. They can't. So especially when we get into October, we should do a check-in conversation, because a lot of those things are going to change. But we're right now, current thinking is we're not going to encourage anyone to vote by mail after like the 10th of October. That may change. That's Pennsylvania specific. I don't want to confuse people in other states, but just be aware that that is a moving target, and that the actual deadline someone who applies then will almost certainly be disenfranchised.
Do we know much about the drop boxes in various states? So technically it won't be by mail?
Yeah, I think a lot of that information is still kind of TBD. So far, DC was the only, jurisdiction where I could find information on those locations. I know for Maryland, it's not available yet. So like I said, as we find out more about that, we'll add it. But I think to Josh's point, if you're not able to, return your vote by mail by that kind of like mid-October point, I think all states will have the drop boxes. So we'll definitely be sharing those resources so people can just return them directly there and they don't have to worry about putting it in the mail. So that'll be more information to come.
There are a number of lawsuits, Peter, that will also impact how that pans out.
And it looks like Brenna just dropped in the chat the Delaware return by mail information.
Can you clarify the mid-October remark? Are you talking about requesting a ballot? Because obviously if you have a ballot, it just needs to be postmarked by election day.
Not everywhere, I don't think.
I don't know, Josh,
It's a lot of, again, I'm only speaking for Pennsylvania. It's still very much up in the air. The governor is pushing to suggest that if it's postmarked by election day, it'll count, but the legislature disagrees with him and the courts will likely decide. So just to be safe at this moment, I think I wouldn't encourage people to apply to vote by mail. Again, you shouldn't say apply, to sign up for vote by mail after that date. If they have a ballot, then yes, absolutely get it in and do it the day you get it. But I would stop applying a couple weeks before election day.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Mm-hmm. And I think there are some states, I think West Virginia comes to mind, that there are distinctions based on like the postage. And yeah, there's usually a cutoff if it's received a certain number of days after election days that states will still accept it. But I think for most there is a cutoff. So that's just something to be aware of on a state-by-state basis.
and we did have a question about voting early in person as an option for the various states, and if that was in the toolkit. And I believe if you look at the sections that are broken out by important deadlines for each state, you'll see early voting period days as well.
Yeah, we're adding that as it's available, and I'm also trying to make sure there are links to the locations so that that's easily accessible as well.
Are there some common problems with the mail-in ballots that get rejected, like not using your exact name as your voter registration is? But basically, are a handful of things that we can direct people to make sure that they're careful of so that the ballots are not rejected?
I think right now, the one thing we do have, I'm not sure that I've added the link to the toolkit itself, but it is on the webpage, is about postage. And they are required to include, I think, on the envelope exactly how much postage is required in order to make sure it gets back to the Board of Elections. But I don't think we have anything about, are you referring to the signature or? I don't think we have anything in there about that right now.
I mean, I traditionally vote absentee in Maryland, or whatever, mail-in. It's actually, I think, absentee. But anyway, they use your driver's license information, and in Maryland, they require you to use your full middle name, which I never use any other way. And that's how I am on my voter registration. So I always have to make sure that I read over the stuff they sent me and exactly which name they had me in. Because I think if I use my middle initial, it might be rejected. That kind of stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, you were muted there at the end.
Sorry about that.
Okay. But that is something that we can keep in mind if there are any kind of like common pitfalls, so to speak. If anyone has resources on those, we can definitely add them.
And I guess that's one of my questions too for the folks that are on the phone. Are there other things that are not included in here in this toolkit that you think would be helpful? I think, you know, the intent with this is to design it so that it's easy for folks to participate with this copy and paste language. That's all 501c3 safe, showing you examples of other groups who have participated in this, so you can get inspiration from them on what you can say. But is there anything that is missing that you all feel would be really helpful? I know for a lot of groups on the phone, this is new territory. So whatever we can provide to make it easier for you all to utilize, please let us know. All right, don't hear anything. Okay, great. So I guess really the next step with this toolkit is to send it out around to our coalitions. The great news is, as many of you all know, Coalition Delaware River Watershed and Choose Clean Water are part of a larger network of coalitions that are hosted by the National Wildlife Federation. We have been in contact with those other water coalitions and currently 2 other groups, Healing Our Waters, which is out in the Great Lakes, and the Coalition for the Mississippi Delta have both told us that they are also going to participate in this hashtag Vote for Clean Water Day on September 1st. So they'll be creating messaging for their members around this, and we'll also be pushing that hashtag out on September 1st, so that's great. So it won't just be this Mid-Atlantic group that'll be doing it, so it'll, you know, be around the country. We're hoping to get some of the other coalitions on board, as well as NWF sending out a civic engagement email to their membership with the Vote for Clean Water Day as well. So our hope is to make it a big impact, and so I guess the next step for everybody on this call is to really go back, whoever's managing your social media, whoever's managing your email, have a conversation with them. If it's you, you know, take a look at your calendar and see how you all can sort of help just kick this off on the 1st. Let's really just like hammer home that hashtag and get people, you know, making sure that they're reminded to do this. And then, as Drew said, I think Drew, you may have mentioned the September 22nd date, which is Voter Registration Day, National Voter Registration Day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our hope, is to do another one of these Vote for Clean Water Days. And so we'll just continue to push this. And I think Drew and Emily mentioned this as well. Our goal is to also adapt the language as we get closer. As Josh said, after a certain point, doesn't make sense, much sense to ask people to do certain things. So as we're getting closer, we're going to change our language to reflect that. And so you'll be seeing more updates to this, as Emily said, this evergreen living document that will also span beyond 2020. You know, this is an important year, but every year should be an important year for voting. So we're hoping that this will continue on for years to come. So next step is to mark off September 1st, Vote for Clean Water Day. Reach out to any of us from CDRW or Choose Clean Water with questions, suggestions, concerns. I think Emily and Drew, I don't know if you guys mentioned that the links to those webinars we did on what you can and cannot do as a 501c3 are on our website. So if you have a very worried board member or somebody else who is like, I don't think we can do this, please send them that information. We have people they can talk to as well, who can sort of walk them back from that. Because again, just like some advocacy work that people are always confused about, you can definitely do these things as a 501c3. So I don't know, Sandra or anyone else from your team, if there's anything you all wanted to add. I think some other folks have dropped some other stuff in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen, and well said. I'll just add that I just want to emphasize that this is a living document as we move forward, especially, you know, the tabling, the kind of like tabling down. I think we'll continue to add to this. I think a lot of the space will look a little bit different after the pandemic and next election cycle. So just know that we're resources to all of you folks. If there's something that's missing, any key messaging, just reach out and we're happy to work with you all on that and get those needs incorporated here.
Great. Have any last minute thoughts, questions before we sign off?
Yeah, just thank you everyone for your interest in taking the time this morning to attend and to learn more about this work. And as Emily mentioned, with telling it to a friend, you know, tell it to your other nonprofit friends too, that get their organizations on board. And, you know, please share the toolkit, share any other resources you might have. Feel free to reach out to us if we can be of assistance in any way. And we'll have the highest voter turnout among environmentalists in a long time, right? That's
the goal. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining today. And again, please reach out if you guys have any questions. And we'll hopefully see you all using the hashtag on September 1st, Vote for Clean Water Day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.